Hey everyone. This Donald Trump phenomenon is just too complex. It was only recently that I fully understood him. What really woke me up was the stuff he said in Munich. So I'm going to do a special discussion. But anyway, in this video, I'm explaining a point of contention to everyone. This is what led to the situation between Zelensky and Donald Trump, and why it's such a big deal. So that's about it. Ukraine signed a trade agreement with the United States, handing over $500 billion in mineral rights to the US. This question actually triggered this serious conflict. I'm going to explain the whole story in detail for everyone and see what the argument point is. So, let me start by saying that Donald Trump warned Zelensky to take action quickly, or he might lose the entire country. Now, this ultimatum really put Zelensky in a position where he had to decide what to agree to, which was to commit to handing over those mineral rights to the US. Otherwise, his team had already hinted that they would ease sanctions on Russia. This ultimatum actually requires Zelensky to agree to it. It means that we have to agree to the right to resist property. If he doesn't hand them over to the US, he might face serious consequences, because his team has already hinted that they would ease sanctions on Russia. Is that good or what? If the US eases sanctions on Russia, for example, on SWIFT, then Russian banks could bounce back really quickly, and Ukraine would be completely defeated. That means we always thought that Donald Trump could at least not help Russia, but he could stand on Russia's side and attack Ukraine. You can't believe that he would rather help Russia fight south. Let's take a look at the whole argument. So this Donald Trump, he said that they took out some money and it was just too thorough. He proposed that if they want something, they need to take $500 billion worth of rare earths and stuff like that. So Zelensky said, no problem. And then what happened? The US put together a contract to scare him. The US Treasury Secretary Mnuchin almost took a train to Poland to make demands, saying that Ukraine should use $500 billion in expanded resources as a return for the military aid previously provided by the US. Do you understand? What he's saying is that the US gave a lot of money to Ukraine, and back then it was unconditional. But now it's different. Now they want to collect. They want $500 billion. Zelensky was willing to hand over these minerals to the US from the very beginning. But the condition is, hey, I'm giving you $500 billion, so are you going to promise to keep supplying me with weapons or provide security guarantees for us or not? The US didn't provide any guarantees. So is that $500 billion just to settle old debts? As for whether there are further guarantees for Ukraine's security, you gave me money, and I have money in Ukraine. So naturally, I will protect you. No need to say more about that. Even my best friend found it unacceptable that he gave you $500 billion US dollars. First thing you gave him for free, and then asked him, do you want to pay a reasonable price? Is it okay to pay such an unreasonably high price? Second, you ask him about the extra, whether there should be something to slow down, whether it's actually weapons, or there are absolutely no substantial security guarantees for Ukraine. None at all. All right. Now that Zelensky has rejected this domestic deal, I can't leave the country because it doesn't exist at all. Hey, are they just asking Ukraine for expanded production without being willing to give anything in return? So this brings up a lot of issues. There are many minerals in the areas occupied by Russia. If Ukraine can't hand them over to you right now, what are we going to do? That's scary. After some consideration, he decided to reject it. He needs to clarify what kind of assistance the US will provide to Ukraine moving forward. What position will they take in these negotiations, and is the US willing to guarantee Ukraine's security? Zelensky said that the actual amount of aid provided by the US is $67 billion in military assistance and $31.5 billion in budget support. So now you're making an offer, saying $350 billion, and you want to include interest too. I mean, this is just like, it's basically like what? It's like the mafia collecting protection money. This is even worse than loan sharks in Ukraine. When you call for help, you take the opportunity to make demands, right? So there's a bill that comes out and you say the bill isn't like that. Everyone just settles the score. That's how it is. Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary, Mnuchin, was treated quite harshly. He said Mnuchin spent many hours on a train. The coalition's foundation just disappeared while he was sleeping, and he rejected it. So he was very angry. That's it. In fact, there are official photos and funny videos of the meeting between Zelensky and Brunson published. But now, with Donald Trump, anyone who goes against his wishes, he just wants to help the US get its own big benefits, trying to reclaim that $500 billion. It's just to settle all your debts with no promises for anything new. The agreement will be restarted. If the situation develops, Zelensky will not be too happy. Not only will they not change the assistance, but they could also lift the economic sanctions against Russia that their officials have clearly stated, and even consider selling weapons to Russia to help them fight. Ukraine has completely halted the supply of parts to Ukraine, even through Germany. And other NATO countries are obstructing the supply of weapons. They can prohibit the use of those weapons because for any US weapons, the US has the final authority to restrict NATO. It's so hard to get weapons made in the United States. It's a matter of life and death for Ukraine, something that everyone didn't expect, right? All right, this security advisor, Jake Sullivan, said that the US has provided Ukraine with a historic opportunity. This means that Ukraine can obtain the best security guarantees. You are giving all your national interest to the US. So naturally, the US won't let Russia occupy your entire country. You don't need to worry, just trust me. You give everything to me, and that's their logic. Wales believes that the two can reconcile, but Donald Trump clearly stated that he loves the Ukrainian people very much, but he feels very frustrated with Zelensky. He once said that he really likes Zelensky. Ukraine needs to have a lot of key elements, like mineral resources, including coal, natural gas, and oil, which are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. It seems that the United States will have Ukrainian graphite, which is very important. What about graphite? The detailed terms and conditions of the rich resources in Judaism will be discussed later. Just be afraid. Just take a look at this. The proportion of the minerals. All right, Iwentor asked if the US still wants to reach an agreement with Zelensky. An anonymous advisor to Donald Trump mentioned that Zelensky has to face reality. They need to push him to make commitments he can't avoid. Sources say Donald Trump wants to reach some agreement with Ukraine, and he has collected a lot of money. And then he can continue to provide some military support to his father, and then he can negotiate peace. That's it. What if it doesn't? He just lets Russia eliminate Poland. The White House security advisor, Sullivan, later told the media that the Ukrainian president needs to return to the negotiating table. He can't refuse, and if the US wants to obtain Ukraine's key mineral resources, an agreement must be reached. You have to give Donald Trump what he wants. The officials expressed their strong dissatisfaction with Zelensky's remarks, believing that criticism of Donald Trump is unacceptable. This means that if he scolds you, that's it. You can't say anything back. Donald Trump is very dissatisfied with Zelensky, as he hasn't come to the negotiating table, and is unwilling to accept the opportunities we offered. The White House security advisor, Jake Sullivan, said that Zelensky should tone down his rhetoric and seriously consider the production expansion deal proposed by the U.S. All right. The result is that Donald Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, Harlow, is on February 20th. I went to the hangar to meet with Zelensky. Zelensky said that both sides have made progress, which includes this economic agreement. Basically, what Zelensky is saying is that you need to prove that you can provide the money, and I can pay you back after the war, meaning that $100 billion can be returned to you. But for the things that come after, you need to put something on the table. How much more military aid are you going to give me? Right. Or maybe it's about providing further military assistance, and secondly, military guarantees. If I give you this, you need to guarantee Ukraine's security. These are the two conditions that need to be put forward. How much more military assistance are you going to give me? How can you guarantee their security? How can you ensure that you won't betray me during negotiations? If we talk about these details and agree on them, will Ukraine actually sign? After the discussions, what will the outcome be? Zelensky said the talks went well, and the result is. Zelensky feels that the talks went pretty well, but this is. So the result is that the press conference was cancelled. The cancellation of the press conference might mean that both sides have already discussed things, but there's a high possibility that it's because the details haven't been finalized yet. There are still some uncertainties. For example, hey, let me give you an example. I'll give you an example. The United States has exchanged $100 billion US, which is so important to Ukraine. The $500 billion US is so beautiful. In order for Ukraine to exist as an independent country, does it need to ensure that it exists as an independent country and has sovereignty? In the next 10 years, after the peace treaty is agreed upon, you can earn $20 billion US every year. This means you need to find a way to guarantee Ukraine's existence. And as long as Ukraine is in the war, you need to provide at least $30 billion worth of weapons to support Ukraine every year. As long as these two conditions are met, Ukraine can present these conditions to Donald Trump. This is why Donald Trump suddenly started criticizing Zelensky. He sees Trump as someone who is very calculating. On Shiguang's birthday, he doesn't think there is a problem with the security of Europe, the security of Ukraine, or the people of Ukraine. The most important thing is to make money. And the most important thing is to make money. Well, after Zelensky's meeting, he is ready to reach an investment and security agreement with the United States. It may take some time to pour out these details in detail, but that's it. If necessary, the second content of the struggle with the United States can be made public. But I think this will not help the relationship between the two sides. Even if the United States has a brand check and wants to pick it up, it turns out that it cannot be signed, because the United States has not promised anything. 2 or 3 people familiar with the matter told Dad that he might seek help from Donald Trump. Signing a framework agreement with Trump means it's not a binding contract. If it comes to peace, then the details can be further refined to reach this agreement. All right, Elon Musk continues to say on social media that if Zelensky is really as beloved by the people as he claims, he should hold a presidential election He doesn't dare to do that because he knows he would lose badly. The media and polling organizations in Ukraine are under his control, and if there were a vote, he would definitely face a crushing defeat. I'm really disappointed in Elon Musk. As someone I looked up to, he's completely clueless when it comes to politics. Ukraine has 20% of its territory under enemy control. And do those people even have the right to vote for Ukraine? There are millions of people living abroad. Do they have the right to vote? How can they vote when Ukraine is at war? When both camps can't freely promote their political agendas, this election becomes meaningless. Also, calling on the people to gather and vote or to campaign during wartime is very dangerous, as they could be caught in the crossfire and face death. We're really very dissatisfied with the situation. Okay,